Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel for another vegan and gluten-free recipe. Today is my 31st birthday, and because it falls on Friday the 13th this year, I thought nothing would be better than making this spooky Friday the 13th themed birthday cake for myself. This episode is broken into two parts. In part one, I'm going to show you how I baked the 3 red velvet cakes that are stacked on top of each other inside this cake. And then in part two, I'll show you how I made the buttercream frosting and the red icing. I hope you enjoy this festive and spooky recipe episode. Don't go anywhere. Part one will begin momentarily. All right, everybody, welcome to the cake baking section. I'm following a recipe from Loving It Vegan. I've linked it down in the description box in case you're curious or would like to try out this vegan red velvet cake for yourself. Before I go through all the ingredients and the recipe steps, I want to make a quick note here that I actually only have one 8-inch round baking pan, which means I'll have to go through the recipe steps 3 times. I know it's a little tedious, it'll take a little bit more time, and honestly I should just get myself more 8-inch round baking pans, but this is what I'm working with today. Now for the ingredients, let's go through each of these 11 tasty items sitting on my countertop one by one super quickly. Each of the 8-inch round cakes is gonna have 1 cup of this gluten-free all-purpose flour. Each of the cakes is also gonna have 1/2 cup of white granulated sugar, 1/2 tablespoon of cocoa powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 cup of unsweetened almond milk, 1/2 tablespoon of lemon juice, 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil, 1/2 tablespoon of distilled white vinegar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and finally 1/2 teaspoon of red food coloring. Now let's go through the 6 steps of the recipe that I'll follow to make each of the 3 red velvet cakes. For step number 1, I'll prepare what's called vegan buttermilk, and the way that I'll do that is to put 1/2 of a tablespoon of the lemon juice into a measuring cup, and then I'll take the almond milk and pour it into the measuring cup up to the 1/2 cup line and let that sit and curdle. For step number 2, I'll mix together all of the dry ingredients, so that'll be the white granulated sugar, the gluten-free flour, the baking soda, the cocoa powder, and the salt. For step number 3, I'll add all of the wet ingredients into the bowl with the dry ingredients, so those ingredients will be the olive oil, the red food coloring, the vanilla extract, the distilled white vinegar, and then the vegan buttermilk, which consists of the almond milk and the lemon juice. Once all the ingredients are well combined in the mixing bowl, I'll move on to step number 4, which is to take that red velvet cake batter and pour it into a baking pan. And I've got my baking pan all ready to go off to the side here. This is the 8-inch round pan I'm using for each of the 3 red velvet cakes. The way that I prepared this was to first grease the bottom with vegan butter, and then I lined it with parchment paper. For step number 5, I'll put the baking pan into my oven and let the cake bake for about 20 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And then for step number 6, I'll remove the cake pan from the oven, put it on top of my stove, and let it sit there to cool for about 20 minutes. And then of course I'll be repeating all of those 6 steps for the 2nd and 3rd red velvet cakes. That's everything you need to know about how I'm preparing the red velvet cakes for my super spooky Friday the 13th birthday cake. So without further ado, let's get started making the first of these 3 cakes. you guys. That was a lot of work. I'm gonna wrap up this part of the episode right now, and then in the next part, you'll see all 3 of the 8-inch round red velvet cakes right here at my countertop. It's gonna be really fun. I can't wait for it. So I will see you over there in the next part. All right, we've made it to the final part of this red velvet cake episode. Here are the lovely 3 finished cakes. First, I'm gonna prepare the frosting, and the recipe I'm using for that is also courtesy of Loving It Vegan. It's the same red velvet cake and frosting recipe all on the same page. It's super cinchy. There's only 4 ingredients right here, and it really is just combining these 4 ingredients and whisking them together. Let's quickly go through these 4 ingredients one by one super quickly. First up, there's 4 cups of confectioner's sugar, also known as powdered sugar. There's also 1/2 cup of vegan plant butter, 3 tablespoons of lemon juice, and finally 2 teaspoons of pure lemon extract. All right, let's get mixing these 4 ingredients together. Like I said, there's just really no recipe steps. It's just combine and mix them all together, and then I'll get to frosting the cakes. All right, everybody, the very exciting time has come to stack the red velvet cakes and frost them. I'm gonna try to get this nice and centered on my cake stand. Is there anything more fun than baking a cake and frosting it and getting it all ready to go, especially your own birthday cake? I really do feel like a contestant on the Great British Baking Show right now. I just love baking so much. I love it even more than cooking. I think cooking is really fun, but in the kitchen, baking is definitely my first choice. Get the 3rd guy on top of there. Oh, how cool is that? Oh my gosh. Before I continue, I just want to give you a little intermediate close-up so you can see the layers and the frosting. So at this point, the top is looking nice and evenly frosted, so I'm gonna get started working on the sides of the cake. So much frosting. I'm so happy with how this icing turned out. I literally used every bit of that buttercream frosting icing that I made for this cake. And of course, let's get you a nice close-up of the cake at this stage of the decorating process. I'm gonna pop this into my fridge and move on to the red icing. The cake is in there safe and sound, so I'm gonna show you now the 4 ingredients that I'll be using to make this red drip icing. First up, I'll be using 100 grams of this vegan white chocolate. I'm also using 20 grams of cacao butter, 70 grams of coconut cream, and finally a few drops of this red food coloring. Now let's go through the 5 steps of the vegan red icing recipe, which I've linked down below. It's not Loving It Vegan, it's actually a separate website. It's courtesy of Sarah Kidd. For step number 1, I'll combine most of the vegan white chocolate chips, probably 90 grams or so, and all of the cacao butter in a double boiler. And I'm actually using a DIY double boiler. You can actually buy them online, but I don't have one myself. So the way you can DIY one is to have a simmering pot of water, and then your mixing bowl is actually sitting on top and above the simmering water below. I've never done this before. I haven't ever used a double boiler in my life, so wish me luck with this step. For step number 2, I'll constantly stir the white chocolate and the cacao butter until it's melted, and I want to make sure it doesn't go above 88 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'll just be sticking the pointed end of this thermometer into the icing mixture and making sure that the temperature isn't reading above 88 degrees Fahrenheit. For step number 3, once the white chocolate and the cacao butter are all melted down and combined in the mixing bowl, I'll remove it from saucepan / double boiler. I'll add in the remaining white chocolate, and then I'll stir in the 70 grams of coconut cream. For step number 4, I'll add in a few drops of the red food coloring, and I want to be really careful with this step because I think if I add too much of the red food coloring liquid, it could actually negatively affect the consistency of the icing. And then for step number 5, I'll take the icing. Once it's all combined and looking ready to put on the cake, I'll put it into a Ziploc bag, which will be my piping bag. I'll retrieve my cake from the fridge, and I'll attempt the icing icing of the cake right here at my countertop. I've got my saucepan all ready to go on my stovetop, so let's head over there and mix together the white chocolate and the cacao butter. Doesn't this Ziploc bag look truly terrifying if you didn't know what I was making? Ooh, here it is. The beautiful cake that I'm about to just paint red. And this is actually, it's looking like it thickened up quite a bit in there. Now let's get some of this on the top. Just get it all the way out to the edges. That's kind of what I'm going for. This red icing is like solidifying the second it touches the cake. I think that does it for the decorating. I'm just gonna get all this red stuff out of the way here. All right, now I'm just gonna tidy this up a tiny bit. There's just like a few little chunks. There is the cake, looking pretty, I don't know, spooky. Paul Hollywood might say rough and ready. And now for the moment of truth, I'm gonna put the cake topper on it. I've got it just waiting for me over to the side. So 1 second. Oh my God, I am obsessed with this. What I'm gonna do really quick is just tuck this hand/dish towel into my apron and my shirt. Hopefully you should be able to see the text of the cake topper. I think I'm gonna take from the back just because I want to preserve how the front looks. I think it looks so good. Ooh, okay, you can definitely see the layers of cake. Loving that. Oh my gosh, how fun is that? I don't remember the last time I had red velvet now that I'm thinking about it. Okay, let's see how this birthday red velvet Friday the 13th cake tastes. I want to get some of this buttercream. Oh my God, I could eat so much of that cake, easily. The lemon flavor is so nice. I don't know if that's how you traditionally frost red velvet cakes or if that's just unique to this recipe, but I love the citrusy flavor going with the cakes, everything, the look, the spookiness. This has to be one of my top 3 cakes in my life. That's been the most fun to make. Well, everyone, that is the end of my 31st birthday Friday the 13th cake recipe episode. I'm glad I got to share a little bit of the birthday festivities with you. If you enjoyed this cake recipe, then definitely check out my 500 subscriber special. I similarly did a 3-tiered cake. If you're feeling like dessert, but you kind of want to go in a different direction than a stacked cake, then definitely check out the chocolate tofu pie that I made in honor of Pie Day. I've linked both of those recipes for you at the very end of this video, so definitely stick around to the end and check either or both of those out. Cheers to age 31. I'm excited to see what this next year holds in terms of the vegan/gluten-free recipes that I'll come up with and share with you on this channel. Take care, my lovely foodies, eat well, and I will see you in the next episode on this channel. Bye!